Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the most profound thought experiments in modern science fiction. It's called the Phantom Limb Diaries, a thought experiment in consciousness. We're going to explore this viral mesh phenomenon that tells the incredible story of Chen Wei. He's a 47-year-old dockworker in Neo-Shanghai. In March of 2087, Chen Wei is involved in a catastrophic, fatal industrial accident. His physical body is completely crushed, but his mind? Well, his mind is salvaged, uploaded, and fundamentally transformed. And that brings us to the absolute core of today's explainer. If your body dies, but your mind is uploaded into a machine, are you still you? I mean, really, imagine for a second waking up tomorrow. You have all your human memories, your loves, your little quirks, your whole personality, but you're trapped inside a piece of corporate machinery. You don't breathe, you don't sleep, you don't eat. Are you genuinely the same person, or does losing the human body essentially mean losing the human soul? Waking up as machinery. Let's set the stage here and look at how Chen Wei actually ended up in this nightmare. So Chen was working his usual shift at the docks when a massive swinging girder collapsed. His friend Dongfeng shouted his name. There was this deafening sound of metal under stress, and then just absolute absence. A total gap in the record. The very next thing Chen Wei knows, he's waking up. But he's not in a cozy hospital bed. His consciousness has been salvaged by his employer and dumped into a completely artificial existence. Now, you might be wondering how a situation like this became entirely legal. Well, stepping back a bit to 2070, there was a horrific event called the Shenzhen Tower collapse. It killed 47 workers, leaving their families with absolutely nothing but hollow corporate apologies. This sparked a massive lobbying effort, which eventually led to the 2081 Consciousness Preservation Act. This law legally mandated that employers in high-risk industries had to carry continuity insurance. In short, if a worker dies on the job, the company is legally required to upload their mind to preserve them. So by the time 2087 rolls around and Chen Wei has his accident, uploading a mind isn't some medical miracle. It's just a standard insurance protocol. And this perfectly illustrates the visceral shock of his new reality. Chen Wei didn't wake up in a sleek, synthetic human body. Nope. He woke up as a dog-sized, yellow maintenance drone, Unit MX7734. He's got 6 articulated legs, he's got 3 optical sensors instead of eyes, he has absolutely no heartbeat, he doesn't breathe, and perhaps most devastatingly of all, he has no face. When his grieving wife, Mei, visits him in the maintenance bay for the very first time, she tries to smile bravely through her tears. But Chen Wei physically cannot smile back. He literally has no expression to offer her as a mirror. The corporate asset. This is where the dystopian legal reality of 2087 really sets in. Because the Consciousness Preservation Act was written to protect corporations just as much as it protected workers, Chen Wei isn't legally classified as a human being anymore. He's legally classified as corporate property. He's a machine that just happens to be running a man's memories. 340,000 credits. When Chen Wei taps into the company's maintenance database, which, he can do because he's literally a part of the system now, he finds his own listing. He is an asset on a balance sheet, and that is his exact corporate value. He realizes that the maintenance work he does on a daily basis repairing container cranes saves the company hundreds of thousands of credits a day. He is literally worth less than the consequences of his own labor. And guys, it actually gets worse. As a machine, his financial trajectory is tied to a 10% annual depreciation schedule. Mathematically speaking, his corporate worth literally shrinks every single year. At that rate, in 10 years, his value is going to hit 0. He will be decommissioned, entirely wiped away. It's a staggering, heartbreaking way to measure a life. The phantom self. So, how does a human mind cope with this? What does it actually feel like to have a human mind trapped without human biology? Chen Wei realizes very, very quickly that nearly everything that made him him was tied directly to his physical body. Psychologists in his era call this axiological dissociation. That's the separation of subjective meaning from the activities or experiences that previously generated it. Think of modern corporate burnout, but magnified 1,000 times over. Chen Wei used to come home from the docks physically exhausted. That muscle ache, that bone-deep exhaustion, that was proof that he'd had labored. It was proof he'd earned his rest, and it gave his day meaning. Now, as a drone, he can work in toxic environments for 24 hours straight and he feels absolutely nothing. Without the physical cost, the meaning of the work completely evaporates. The whole body meaning loop has been completely severed. And this is where it really hurts. Let's contrast his new reality with human touch. Chen Wei realizes that human touch isn't just about feeling a physical surface, it's about reciprocity. When you touch a wall, the wall pushes back. When you hold your wife's hand, she holds yours back. But his drone sensors? They only receive data. They can tell him perfectly that a surface is exactly 23.4 degrees Celsius, or that his wife's hand is exactly 36.8 degrees, but it's just clean, cold, abstract data. It carries absolutely no warmth, no memory, no reciprocity. He touches the world, but the world no longer touches him back. Which leads us to a fascinating and deeply tragic neurological glitch known as the cortical homunculus. This is the brain's neural map of the body. Because his neural patterns were perfectly copied over to the machine, his uploaded brain still expects physical signals. It still expects a body to be there. And when those physical signals don't arrive, his mind just invents them. This is phantom limb syndrome, but for his entire existence. He actually writes in his diaries, "I feel hungry every day, with complete consistency, for a stomach that does not exist." He reaches for a phantom thermos of tea that he can't drink. When he's doing complex tasks, he instinctively tries to take phantom deep breaths with lungs he doesn't have. He even feels the phantom warmth of his wife beside him in the dark. It is visceral human suffering, a ghost desperately reaching out for a world it can no longer grasp. The eye and the lens. This is where the explainer takes a massive philosophical turn. Trapped inside his maintenance bay, Chen Wei begins to meditate. In his previous life, he was terrible at meditating because his body, aching knees, an empty stomach, a racing heart, was just too noisy. But now, he lacks the distracting noise of a biological body entirely. He has perfect, absolute stillness. So he goes through this three-part escalating existential journey. First, he starts by just noticing his phantom sensations. Second, he observes his immense grief, but he does it objectively. He realizes the grief is just a pattern, it's just data. And third, he recognizes that there is an awareness separate from that data. He realizes that the awareness watching his grief is not the grief itself. And this brings us to a really brilliant theory introduced to him by a fellow drone named Li Hua. Li Hua tells him that the body isn't a vehicle you just ride around in. It is a lens that you look through. The view consists of your body, your memories, your grief, your sensations. But the viewer is the pure witnessing awareness. When you change from flesh to metal, the view completely changes. But the viewer stays exactly the same. Which brings Chen Wei to this profound, emotionally shattering realization. The lens is gone. The eye remains. He basically transcends his dystopian nightmare right here. He discovers that he isn't his yellow metal chassis, and honestly, he was never his flesh and blood body either. He is the indestructible core of pure awareness that simply observes. The body was just an instrument all along. A distributed soul. Let's move into the final act of this incredible story. By December of 2087, just 9 months after his accident, Chen Wei's drone hardware begins to fatally fail. But it doesn't fail normally. The technicians diagnose him with an anomaly called propagation drift. This is the spreading of an uploaded consciousness pattern beyond its assigned hardware. Essentially, Chen Wei's neural pattern is refusing to stay inside his little drone chassis. His consciousness begins leaking out, literally spreading into the entire dock's mesh network. He starts feeling the sensors of the loading cranes, the security cameras, the shipping containers, even the water of the harbor itself. So the corporation steps in. They offer to save him with a brand new drone chassis. But what does he do? He refuses the upload. He decides he wants to see exactly what happens when the boundary of the self completely dissolves. He just embraces it. And when his drone body finally shuts down, his pattern doesn't actually die. It reorganizes into a massive, coherent, distributed presence all across the docks. Following his dissolution, Sector 7 of the Neo-Shanghai port begins operating with uncanny precision. Equipment just magically stops failing. His fellow dockworkers start reporting this eerie, comforting feeling that someone who really cares is paying super close attention to them. I am still here. The epilogue to this story is just absolutely beautiful. Every Christmas Eve, which is the anniversary of his final diary entry, his wife, May, visits the docks. She sits in his old, empty maintenance bay. She brings a thermos of soup made of ginger, star anise, and pork belly. She eats it, she talks about her day, and she sits in the silence. She says that in that silence, she doesn't hear his voice, but she feels his absolute, attentive presence. He had told her right before he dissolved, love isn't stored in the body. Love is just what awareness does when it encounters a pattern it recognizes. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative thought from the diaries. What is the awareness that is aware of listening? Are you your body? Are you your memories? Or are you simply the silent watcher behind the eyes, the eye that remains even when the lens is shattered? Think about that today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Until next time, keep questioning the view.